We now return to our feature presentation, Where We Stood, Chicago's Resistance to the U.S. War on Iraq.
It was one of the largest protests in Chicago's recent history. Right after the war with Iraq began, at least 10,000 people marched through Chicago.
The largest gathering I think we had had in Chicago prior to the 20th was maybe somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 to, at most, I think 8,000. And I said, this is already bigger than that.
It was lively, it was positive, and it was really crowded.
I didn't intend to go to the protest. I was going up to Chicago with my mom to buy a prom dress, and that was the first day of the war, and I had to go to school that day, and nobody even said anything about it. Nobody cared, and it was the most hopeless day for me. I just couldn't handle it.
The disc jockey broke in and said what was happening, and she looked at me and she said, "Mom, I can't look for a prom dress now."
So we went and parked the car in a parking garage, and we got out because we were so excited. It was so powerful to see all those people.
Up until March 20th, if someone had said, "Are you a peace activist?" I would have said no. I am politically active. I'd never gone to a protest before. This, to me, was sort of the bridge too far.
Anti-war movement, and with that, I'd like to introduce Doc Walls of Operation Push. Let's give him a big hand.
We had been preparing, not just in terms of publicity for this, for many months. Communications, we had been preparing sound, we had been preparing a plan. If they ignore our voices, let them try and ignore our bodies. And our goal all along was to take Lakeshore Drive.
Talking to the people, y'all, out in the streets. Talking to the people, y'all, out in the streets. What do we want? What do we want? Oh, talking to the people, y'all, out in the streets. Talking to the people, y'all, out in the streets.
We started to head east on Jackson. I look as we get to Michigan, and there are folks on Monroe and Washington also heading east, and there is as large a crowd as the crowd I was in, which I thought was the only crowd.
I was chanting with all my friends, and I felt really empowered.
Show me what democracy looks like!
At one point, I even had my arm around a cop and was saying, you know, whose streets are streets? And he was kind of laughing, and it felt really good.
It was this massive humanity, and it was completely nonviolent. People were not charging police lines. They were merely going around them.
I just went with the crowd, and I couldn't believe I was walking on Lakeshore Drive.
Even now I'm getting the shivers. It was so overwhelming, and it was a beautiful night, and we were all just so energetic and really, really having a great time.
I remember thinking and saying, they're letting us do this. They're not trying to stop us from doing this at all, and I was really quite surprised.
The people had permission to be in Lakeshore Drive. I know this because Commander Risley told me on State Street that we had permission.
Back in, right at Adams and Dearborn again. Okay. Let's go, guys.
I got a phone call from my girlfriend in the middle of a writing class saying, hey honey, you're not going to believe this. Chicago's on the national news. They've taken over Lakeshore Drive. That was my clarion call. And I thought, if I don't leave here right now and immediately run down to where things are happening, I will never forgive myself for the rest of my life.
We knew that this would make the news, and we wanted everyone in the world to know that we weren't supporting our government in this action.
And all of a sudden you're confronted with the big picture that we failed to prevent this war, and here we are now. So what else are you going to do but assert yourself as Chicagoans, as residents or citizens of the United States, and you're going to take a nice walk up Lakeshore Drive.
Then by Lake Point Towers, I'm still running along, and I get just around the corner, and here's Lakeshore Drive, and it's empty, but I hear this, and out in front of me are all these marchers, and they're marching along. And I see signs, and I see the helicopters, little hung lights up in the sky, shining down on everything that's happening. And I was just filled with this enervated feeling. Now, finally, they have to listen to us.
Now the police are coming in with tear gas guns, and I don't know if they're going to try to disperse them here or not, but they are coming in. They have their gas masks on.
It started going bad when we came off Lakeshore Drive, and they wouldn't let us move.
Lead the crowd! First one, interlock hands, lead the crowd! First one, interlock hands, lead the crowd!
I should have thought that getting across the park up until the Drake Hotel was relatively easy, that at one point it was going to get harder. and that's where it got harder, at the Drake.
Everybody who was marching, I think, felt this is really great. We've been able to get our message out. We've been able to say we really strongly oppose what the United States is doing. Let's turn around, go back to the Federal Plaza and disband.
And there's still families and children and elderly, but it's getting a little bit later now. It's getting around 8:30 p.m. and we've been now waiting and stopped for about 45 minutes, and we're wondering what's going on.
The energy changed. There was a really different energy to the crowd. Police lines were mounting. Then first they were just one deep, then they were two deep, and everybody had their riot gear, and everybody had their sticks out, and people were flipping down their visors. And we were an entirely peaceful crowd.
Ultimately, they let us march in a different direction. They wouldn't let us get onto Michigan Avenue, but they let us march in a different direction.
Stand that corner. You can do whatever you want. Stand that side.
And then, of course, ultimately, cops marched them into what was basically a trap on Chicago Avenue between the Outer Drive and Michigan Avenue.
And I noticed at the point when we got to Michigan Avenue that the people who were the organizers of the march, many of them had been arrested.
So at this point, we didn't really know what to expect. Those folks from the tactical team were getting rounded up and pulled away and arrested as well. And at that point, I was like, well, this is essentially leaderless now.
I had linked arms with people around me, not as a piece of civil disobedience, but out of sheer terror. I thought, how did I get here? I was right in the front. I was right in the front staring at these policemen, and they're angry, and they've got these truncheons in their hands, and they're ready to use them.
No, you're not! No, you're not! No, you are not!
And then I thought, I'm in the right. I didn't do anything wrong. I'm here because I'm expressing my First Amendment right to free speech. I'm expressing my Third Amendment right to peaceably assemble, and I'm expressing my right to dissent.
We found the march, which had stopped in front of the Drake on Oak Street, and so we decided to watch. And within maybe a minute or two, I saw people getting beat up and dragged away. And so immediately we walked toward Michigan Avenue, and there was a row of police shoulder to shoulder there. And I asked if we could get through because we were looking for Water Tower Place. And they very, very abruptly said, no, you can't get through.
They never said to disperse, and they wouldn't tell us how to leave, and they wouldn't allow us to leave. So that's when I started getting scared.
Was it arrogance? Was it hostility? Was it fear? Was it a close personal relationship with our chief executive in the White House? For whatever the reason, somebody from up high said, game over, we're cracking down now.
I came into a clearing and saw a young man who, two officers each had handfuls of his dreadlocks and were yanking him around in both directions. I turned back around and was just face to face with a line of riot cops.
One lady was, she had a megaphone, and she was like, remember 68 or something like that. And the police just bombarded her, knocked the megaphone down, and took her to jail.
The police started moving in on us like in these waves and pushing us back and pushing us back. The boy next to me leaned over and he said, you know, I'm not standing on my own weight right now. I mean, we were really that packed in. After all of these situations where we have people crushed trying to leave a place, I couldn't imagine how they could think it was okay for them to crush us in.
Police officers in riot gear had started moving at the crowd, holding their billy clubs like this and striking at the crowd.
It was like this psychological game. They didn't arrest whoever was closest to them. They would push people aside and be like, excuse me, oh, you're coming with me.
I just want to join him? That's my dad, I don't care who he is.
I saw at least 4 or 5 folks beaten with batons by the police, trampled over, and I saw at least 3 or 4 folks dragged almost half a city block.
I sat down in the street because I did not want to be seen as a threat. And then I was dragged off by 2 officers and frisked by a male officer and loaded on a bus.
Initially, it was about the war, and then it became more about, you know, well, we have a right to be here.
I saw them taking Katie. I saw them taking a lot of people, but you know, it didn't mean as much until they took my daughter, and she turned around and said, Mom!
I ended up standing outside the paddy wagon chatting with one of the police officers who made an unfortunate joke. If my captain looks over here and sees us chatting, I might have to slap you in the face and rough you up a little bit, make sure it looks like I'm doing my job.
A young man who I later found out his nose was broken. I just saw his face full of blood. I watched them load him into a wagon. I saw him released the next day. He was released almost right after us. Nose still broken, having been in jail for over 15 hours, no medical treatment, and took himself to the hospital.
It was so unbelievable to me that we were being arrested because we hadn't done anything.
In order to wage an unjust, illegal, and immoral war abroad, you have to have a police state at home. And it made perfect sense.
An officer said, okay, come with me. And so I followed him, and he just threw me in a cell. And I was like, when am I getting out? When am I going to see my mom? And he just left, and I didn't see her for 26 hours.
I lost all faith in democracy and due process and all the wonderful things that this country is supposed to be bringing to Iraq.
I'm absolutely proud to have been arrested that night. I am proud to have been counted as somebody who's against this war.
Not too many people would like to stand up, you know, especially like my age. They don't really stand up for what they, you know, believe in. They'll bitch about it over here and there, but, you know, they won't do anything about it. And I feel good that I did something about it, and I'm proud of what I did.
They're not going to scare me out of being active. They never will.
I'm going to go out and protest again.
I believe in the marrow of my bones that I did the right thing and that everyone else there did the right thing.
This experience radicalized a lot of people. It really woke people up. Is this democracy? Is this freedom? Is this constitutional? Is this moral? Is this right? What's going on?
We've telegraphed a message out there that for part of the populace in this country, you don't get a pass. You will be held accountable. Your actions will be called into question. Your motivations will be probed. And more broadly than that, your whole agenda will be scrutinized. And growing numbers of us are really quizzical about what your real scheme is. That's the beginning of a powerful, popular movement.
We are your friends, we come in peace. We brought our guns to set you free. No need to run, no need to hide. We only kill our enemies. Our cause is good, our cause is just.
You've been watching Chicago Independent Television, a project of the Chicago Independent Media Center Video Collective. The Independent Media Center is a growing worldwide network of media producers, journalists, citizens, and activists, working to put the media in the hands of everyday people and away from corporate and commercial interests. To learn more, visit our website at chicago.indiemedia.org. There you can find out about upcoming Chicago area events and how to get involved in making your own media, including how to help make this very TV show. Thanks for watching. See you next time.